Okay, welcome to our weekday text gathering. Today is day 170 of the Circles reading calendar, and we are studying chapter 13, section 7, the continuous present. This is a section about seeing everyone in their true reality as God created them. It's about seeing through the lens of love without seeing through the lens of the past. It is a meaty section, it is a relevant section, and it is an incredibly liberating idea if we understand and apply it. Robert and I have been talking for the past 2 days about how the course, if you just really get the lessons, can erase the need for so much therapy that we go through in our lives. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. As for announcements, once again, the biggest for this group is that our text gatherings will be ending tomorrow. We will do something special, and I hope that all of you will be able to join us for that. And we are still continuing to talk about ways that we can keep the community going through frequent engagement, just not quite in this format. Robert, did you have something you wanted to say? You were.
Oh, well, yeah, we shouldn't say it until we're sure, but we've got some ideas that are slightly different than what we shared with you so far. It would still be something every weekday, but maybe something different than one of the weekdays. So
Yeah. We're
we'll let you know
trying
when we know.
to, yeah, we're trying to crack the nut of what's so great about this is that we're all going through the text together. And the idea, as we presented it before, was workbook one day, text one day, prayer one day. It just feels a little disjointed. And so we're trying to figure out how we
I don't know
can.
if we're going to crack that particular nut.
Yeah,
We'll
we
see.
still we're pondering how to crack that nut.
Yeah.
We recognize that it's an issue, and we're trying to figure out how to address it. So stay tuned for more on that. In the meantime, let's go ahead and do our prayer. I am not doing 232 today, so I will do another prayer. So if all of you will close your eyes, take a deep breath with me. And bow your head in prayer. Dear God, thank you for the opportunity to come together today as loving friends and mighty companions on this remarkable path of light. We surrender this gathering to you, and we ask that it serve your purposes and be blessed by you. Dear God, in this time and in all time, may we not use our past experience as the lens through which to judge the present. May we learn to look upon everyone without the shadows we bring. And may we see your reality in this moment, knowing that the present holds the only things that are forever true. Dear God, may we see the light in us that was given us by you. And may we give it to others so that our joy and your joy is spread around a world made bright with love. Please take a moment to extend your love and blessing to everyone on this call today. Say to them, may you let the past go and look without condemnation upon the present. This is your release. Now take a moment to receive the love and blessings from everyone around the world who is loving and blessing you right now. Say, I will let the past go and look without condemnation on the present. This is my release. I will let the past go and look without condemnation on the present. This is my release. Remembering that the laws of love are not suspended because we sleep. And may our loving thoughts and miracles open our eyes at last. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Well, as Emily said, we have another section today that has a lot to do with the past, just like our recent sections have. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Oh, wait. Okay. The section is called the continuous present, and there's a really, I think, important teaching in here about the nature of the present in relation to past and future, which I'm not going to actually talk about. What this section does is sort of the main running theme in my view is seeing our brother without the past. So here are the points that I wanted to bring out. First, it seems natural to us to evaluate our brother based on his past behavior. Doesn't that seem natural? Right? When you're with someone over time, you build up this whole fund of their past behaviors, of the patterns that run through those behaviors, and all of that is the lens through which you see that person. All of that reveals to you, at least in your mind, who that person really is. That seems natural to us. What this section does, though, is sort of, pull away the curtain and show us that there's more going on there than we realize. So my next category says, but we bring the darkness of the past into the present because we are afraid of the light. The passage says, for the past can cast no shadow to darken the present unless you are afraid of light. And only if you are, would you choose to bring this darkness with you. And by holding it in your mind, see it as a dark cloud that shrouds your brothers and conceals their reality from your sight. So underneath what we tell ourselves, which is, well, it's just, it's a natural, necessary process to judge someone based on all their past behaviors. What's really going on is we're taking this past darkness. Obviously, so many of those behaviors are ones that we felt hurt by, right? Those are the ones we really cling to in memory. We cling to good memories too, but there's some special fondness we have for the hurtful ones. So we cling to those, we bring them with us, bring them into the present because we're afraid of the light. Does that make sense? Does it make sense that we're hanging on to all those hurtful memories and bringing them all into the present as our frame of reference because there's an underlying fear of the light? Next point is, it's our own darkness we are bringing into the present. He says, this darkness is in you. Another passage says, your past was made in anger. And if you use it to attack the present, you will not see the freedom that the present holds. What the combination of those two lines, the darkness is in you and your past was made in anger, what they say to me is, whereas we think we're looking on those past events, the thing that person said, during that dinner party or the thing that person did in that moment. We're carrying all those things, telling ourselves, hey, it's just the facts. When in fact, our memory of and interpretation of and selection of those facts was made in anger. It's not objective at all. It's highly subjective. The end product is all about the darkness in us. And I don't know if that's so hard to see, at least to consider in the abstract. Because, when you discuss all those hurtful memories with someone else, often you find there's a whole other picture than what you had, right? Not always. Sometimes you were, on some level more right than you thought, but oftentimes there's a whole other picture than what you saw. And you realize just how subjective and somewhat arbitrary those memories are. Could those memories of the hurtful behaviors of the other person, could they say more about the darkness in you and the anger in you than they say about who that person really is? Next point, we need to see our brother with no reference at all to the past. It's a radical idea. When you have learned to look upon everyone with no reference at all to the past, either his or yours, as you perceived it, you will be able to learn from what you see now. The suggestion there is there's something to see now that is apart from that long stream of past behaviors. Something to see here and now that you're not seeing, but you could see if you had eyes to see, if you didn't shroud your brothers in that dark cloud from the past. What could you see? Next quote says, the miracle enables you to see your brother without his past, and so perceive him as born again. What a beautiful idea, to be able to see someone as born again. Think about some of the people we have a really significant past with, where we see that person almost like weighed down in invisible chains and shackles. Wouldn't it be great to see that person as born again? Now, I think there's an issue, and I was talking about this with Emily earlier today. There is an issue with, well, how do we understand those behaviors without reference to past behaviors? Very often, you can't understand a behavior from someone unless you see it as, unless you link it with similar behaviors over time. And I think the Course would say that whole process is incredibly subjective and ego-driven. At the same time, I think there's something like there's a practicality. Like, what if you have a child who has certain, learning difficulties, for instance? Chances are you're going to spot those as a pattern. It's easier to spot those things as a pattern of behaviors rather than a single behavior. I don't think we have to just abandon all that, but I think we have to set that whole process aside completely from trying to understand who that person is. Do you have? Okay. We have to see that that's completely separate from realizing and seeing the reality of this person. And that's what we get to in the next point. There in the present, we will discover that he, our brother, is the Christ, who has no past. The Christ revealed to you now has no past, for he is changeless. How can something that's changeless have a past? The whole idea of having a past is change over time. And in his changelessness lies your release. For if he is as he was created, there is no guilt in him, no cloud of guilt, remember the cloud of guilt from that previous passage, has risen to obscure him, and he stands revealed in everyone you meet, because you see him through himself. When he talks here about seeing someone with no reference to the past, not evaluating that person by reference to past deeds, something in our mind says, that just sounds crazy. How will I understand who this person is? Well, let's ask this question. Can any analysis of that person's past behavior reveal him to you as the Christ? I don't think so. There's some process that has to be outside of the whole analysis of behavior if we're going to see the Christ revealed to us in this person in front of us. That requires a different process. And I think what Jesus is saying here is that process can't take place if we're dragging that darkness from out of the past and then taking it as this dark cloud and shrouding our brothers in it and concealing who they are. Whatever allows us to see the Christ revealed to us in this person, it can't happen if we shroud that person in darkness from the past. So we see the person without his past. That allows him to be revealed to us as the Christ, which in the Course is the true self that all of us share. And the next point is this releases him, allowing him to be born again. The passage says, his errors are all past, and by perceiving him without them, you are releasing him. Now, in Course circles and spiritual circles in general, it's all about like releasing our own mind, right? You don't forgive that person because they deserve it, because it heals them. It's so that you are freed of the bitterness and the poison of past resentment. But that's not how the Course acts. It's important to free our brother. And seeing him without his past does that. Imagine if you were with somebody who you've known forever, and over time they've stacked up so many sins that either you have, you carry an anger on the surface, you carry an anger right below the surface that can get triggered easily, or you just carry a deadness. Have you noticed how you can be sort of dead inside towards people that you once were completely alive to? That's the weight of those past sins. Now imagine if some miracle could take away that whole rap sheet that you're carrying around that causes you to have the deadness, the anger, the sensitivity, whatever. Imagine that whole thing were just miraculously removed from your mind. Don't you think that even without saying hardly a word, that other person could feel it and would feel released by it? I mean, that would have an effect on that other person. That would release them, allowing them to be born again. And then the process isn't over. Then his gratitude will release us by showing us the light in us. There's a beautiful passage here that says, the sick who ask for love are grateful for it. And this is love. To say, I release you from your past, that's love. So they're grateful for it, and in their joy, they shine with holy thanks. It's just about 10 words there. And in their joy, they shine with holy thanks. But there's such a power and beauty in that brief line. If you release them from their past, they're healed of sickness, they're grateful for your love, they light up with joy, and they shine with holy thanks. And this, the holy thanks, they offer you who gave them joy. They are your guides to joy. And this is a process that I don't think is entirely foreign to us. If you do release someone, they do experience joy and they're grateful. And then they offer you that gratitude and they become your guide to joy because their gratitude shows you the light in you. Remember that talk about you only bring the past darkness with you because you're afraid of the light? Well, now you've let go of that past darkness. You've given light to your brother, and your brother returns it to you with his gratitude, proving to you the light is in you. So it's not just, okay, I'm released from my past resentments. There is that, of course. But there's an interactive component to this. If we can see our brother without his past, we release him, and then he releases us. Okay, so we have some time for discussion.
Yeah, so this section is, as I mentioned in the intro, it's just so full. And there's so much here. And as we were reading it this morning, one thing that came to me is why we're holding on to the past because we're afraid of the light. We're afraid of redemption, as we talked about in a previous section. So why is that? Why do we do that, given all that the light has to offer us? And one idea in the course is that we're afraid that our pull towards God would sweep us away and we would somehow lose ourselves in the process. But another, I think we can relate to that on some level, but I don't think it's the most relatable thing. I think what we can relate to is, unless we judge the present through the lens of the past, then somehow we lose control. Other people will step on us, they'll take what's ours, they'll rob us of our specialness, and that's what we're really protecting, and that's why we're so afraid of the light. It's not that we're afraid of what we'll gain, we're afraid of what we'll lose, and it's primarily around our own specialness.
Yeah, I think what we're ultimately afraid of is something on the ego level. We want to save face on the ego level. And the more we can blame our brothers, it feels like the more we protect and even elevate our ego.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, whatever reason is that we are afraid of the light, I think we can follow the logic in this section. I think there is a profound attachment we all have to the past, and we do want to share our story of how we were hard done by in the past and have others believe in that story. And all of
Punish
that,
the other person for what they've done to us
punish
by
the other
holding that
person.
story.
Yeah. And I think that what this section asks us to consider is that whole thing could be not our healing, but could be what's keeping us from healing. We could be born again. We could allow them to be born again if we were willing to leave all that in the past.
So Trinity is saying this implies that the way we see someone, if we see them as sinful because of their behavior, that they can never choose to behave not sinfully if we don't see them unsinfully. Do you follow that?
Yeah, I mean, from the Course's standpoint, no one really sins, even though attack is basically the norm for human beings. Most of us attack all the time in disguised forms that we think are not attack. And yeah, it's true that if you see someone differently, they're not going to be enlightened all of a sudden and stop attacking. But the fact is that how we see people does have a profound effect on them. And if we see them in the light, that changes them, not on the real level, but on this level. It does change them. And so they will not be entirely the same.
Yeah. And that's the power of forgiveness, because in the presence of someone who has truly forgiven you, you do feel healed, you do feel different. And that's the essence of the spiritual practice, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's
You
what we're
feel
all,
released.
yeah. And then you, in turn, your gratitude releases them, makes them
Right.
see the light in themselves.
Right.
Okay. Um, no, there's no more questions here. So, well,
Okay.
Trinity says, if a brother chooses to lie and we see the lie, our seeing the lie makes him choose to lie again. All that.
It's not, I mean, the Course isn't asking us to be kind of, idiots about what's going on in front of us. Um, we can see what happened realistically without giving it the meaning that our ego wants to give it. So I would say we acknowledge, yes, there was a lie, but do we have to give it that judgmental, condemning meaning in which we withdraw love from that person and feel justified in attacking that person? All that. So it's not the act that we have to say, well, that act didn't happen. It's the meaning that we give it that we have a choice about.
Yeah, and that falls in line with some of what we were talking about this morning, where that we feel like when we're hurt, then the work becomes getting out of that hurt to forgiveness. But you could really save yourself a lot of time if you don't get so hurt in the first place.
Which ultimately is a choice. And there's some really great teaching in the Course about that, because it seems like it's not a choice, right? It seems like it's just a fact. What
Mm-hmm.
they did that emotional thing to me. But the Course would say there's this middle term there where we have a choice in how we interpret it, and it's that choice to interpret it that really caused our emotions.
Okay. Exercise.
Okay. I thought we'd have more to talk about. There's a lot we could discuss here. I mean, you and I discussed for a long time this morning about, okay, so what do we do about, do we just like not reference their past behavior at all? And
Well,
there's some
yeah, I mean,
thorny
and
issues here.
I I want to bring that in because I feel like that is always the perennial question, but we've talked about it so much in this. Sorry, there's flies here. Um, in terms of boundaries, you say something like, "See the true reality of your brother as God created them in the present always," and what people tend to hear with that is, okay, so this is an excuse to release my boundaries and forgive my abuser and let in bad behavior that just continually repeats itself, and I'm supposed to consider that the loving perspective. I mean, usually people get pretty fired up about this, but that's
Right.
not in the chat.
Okay. Okay.
But you
Great.
should address it now that I've brought it up.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
I I do think that there can be a place for drawing boundaries. In the CE, he says in one of the miracle principles that the miracle enables you to, I forget it what it is, but it's properly perceive or identify both intrapersonal boundaries and interpersonal boundaries. So there's a place for that. We've talked about in one of these recent classes, I think, about how Jesus said about Edgar Casey, essentially that he should have been willing to say no to the requests that he received, because not saying no caused an early death of his. So he needed to draw boundaries of a sort there. Um, I think that if we're, as we get further along, the need to protect ourselves becomes less. But right now, it's not like we can handle anything. We can't. Um, I just think that the more we can take out of that process, all of that blame and you hurt me, and what you did to me is kind of like my IOU from life that says I'm owed by life. Um, there's a whole story that we carry around that just poisons everything, I think. And the more
Mm-hmm.
we can extract that story, the more we can behave towards others in ways that are truly practical, both from an earthly standpoint and a higher standpoint.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right that no matter whether we're saying it or whether we're not saying it, if we're carrying the past into the present, the other person feels it. They just feel it by our presence in the room. And that's hurtful, whether you're using hurtful language or not. It looks like some people have some things to say.
Okay.
Lori and then
Yeah,
Chris.
I was just wondering, I've been practicing looking at my thoughts. Who am I, what am I thinking about people, places, and things? I mean, it could be because I could get mad at something that's not working, like a vacuum cleaner or something. And it's like, the more I love myself, the more I am compassionate to things that I look at with judgment. And so our thoughts do create. And so if I'm holding someone if I choose to hold someone in a higher esteem than look at their errors against me, what they've done to me, and and make that a big story, they actually transform. That relationship actually transforms. Now, if I could just be consistent in that non-judgment and look to what I love, or how can I love myself more so I can love others? It's just a thought. Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah. Thanks, Laurie. And in the Course, the royal road, you could say, to loving yourself is loving them, forgiving them, giving to them. That's the way we best come to love ourselves.
And Chris.
Robert, yesterday you talked about, I think it was yesterday, Orville Hendricks, and
Orville,
the
yeah.
fact that you have the hole in your soul, and that's what you would attract. And if you can step back from the happening and say, oh, something's going on here, and it doesn't mean you let them do what they do, but something's going on here. Maybe there's a learning in this situation for me. And if you get in touch with what's going on in yourself that might have drawn them, it's like If the Buddha Dated, there's a book, If the Buddha Dated, you create yourself to attract the people who are loving to you, and to attract people who are willing to work in the healing, because you don't attract anybody unless there's healing. But the ones you want to attract are the ones who will heal with you. And then you find that out by asking them simple questions. This triggered something in me. Will you help me with this? And if they say, oh yeah, blah, 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 you know that this is somebody you don't want to try to heal with, and you want to heal yourself. But if there's somebody who says, oh, honey, let me help, what can I do? And you talk about that. So I think it's, we're attracted to people who have an opportunity to heal with us, or ones to completely stay away from. And we figure that out by how we interact with that person. And that's what, if somebody says, own the feeling, I got triggered by this, will you help me? And then you can do something with that, and by all means, Spirit, Jesus, come with me to say the right words, those things. I mean, absolutely pull in Spirit, because, that's how you get in touch with these things and the right words to say. So I have found that if I do that, own my own stuff, people who I have issues with, they'll just kind of disappear as long as I deal with my own issues. And it's easier to have, the breakup is easier, but totally do the pull in Spirit to help. But
I don't know. I mean, while you're talking, I feel like it's such a different way to talk about it than what I see in the Course. The Course doesn't talk about attracting people or attracting things. Here's how I think about it. I'll just share how I think about it. I think about it as God's plan sends certain people into my life. And that's very much the language of the Course as well. There's a lot of talk about, I one time collected all the passages that talk about people being sent to us or us being sent to them. It's a huge number. And once they're there, you know, I'm just meant to receive them, welcome them, see them, treat them in the best light that I can, and try to follow my guidance. And I do believe that guidance is there for what form the relationship should take. You know, not every relationship can be a primary relationship. There's just too many people on earth. So I do try to discern what form the relationship should take. But in terms of that whole process of attracting somebody that kind of works for me, and that whole thing is just, to me, it's a foreign language. I don't personally think in those terms, and I don't hear the Course talking in those terms.
And there's few more questions. The
Oh, really?
chat
And
has
we got
kind
to do
of
the exercise. So the
lit up.
chat's lit up finally.
Yeah, I think the more that we started dialoguing about this, the
Yeah.
questions started to form in
Yeah,
the minds of others. So should we do the exercise? And then those who have to go, you're welcome to go, but we should probably stay on and answer some of
Okay.
these.
Okay, so let me, I won't share my screen again because you don't need to see the exercise. So I'll just go ahead and read it, take you through it, and then we'll send it out later. Okay, so it'll probably help if you close your eyes. Think of someone, a particular individual you've known for a long time with whom you have a significant past. Realize that any lack of love on your part is largely a result of your memory of this person's past misdeeds. Notice how your understanding of who this person is a result of his or her past. Now say to yourself, the past can cast no shadow to darken the present unless I am afraid of the light. The darkness is in me. And now say directly to this person. I'll repeat the lines and you can say them silently to this person after me. I see you with no reference at all to the past, either yours or mine. I see you without your past, and so perceive you as born again. I allow Christ to be revealed to me in everyone I meet, including in you. I see you as the Christ, who has no past, for he is changeless. And conclude with this line from the section. To be born again is to let the past go and look without condemnation upon the present. To be born again is to let the past go and look without condemnation upon the present. Amen.
I hope everyone can see now why course-based psychotherapy should be a thing. There is such freedom in just letting it go.
Okay, so did we want to continue?
Yeah, we
With-
want to continue. I just
Okay.
didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to say on that. Anita says,
Well, yeah, I mean, the course has a very different approach to the past, the wounds of the past, the people of the past. It's just different.
yeah, are you interested in healing your insanity or studying its past? Anita says, some people seem impervious to loving thoughts. Can this be true? Now that,
I don't think anyone really is, but they can be on the surface. What the course says, and there's a great discussion of this in the manual, section 6, it says that though any love given to somebody, in that case it's healing, but we could broaden it to any love given, they will receive it instantly, but may not accept it on a more conscious level for however long. They will eventually. So they have received it, and they will sooner or later accept it, which kind of suggests the receiving is on an unconscious level. And I think it's important to realize, like I remember loving the teaching in the Bhagavad Gita where you release attachment to the fruits of your actions. Like, I'm not attached to the results of giving this person love. I like the course's approach a little better, where you trust the other person did receive it. There's something in them you can absolutely trust to receive it, even if they're consciously not accepting it yet.
And by something, you mean the Christ in them, the Holy Spirit in them,
Their right mind,
all of the above?
all the above, yeah.
It's a great
Yeah.
question, Anita, though, because it is true when we apply these principles and we just become more loving people, sometimes you can extend your hand and it can be slapped. And so you're thinking, well, did it not work? Did I do something wrong? And I love the idea that something in them will always accept our love. And so our job is just to
Yeah.
keep giving it.
Yeah. There's a great lesson in the workbook where he says, even if you think your gifts are ineffectual to your brother, there's a part in him that joins with your mind in thanking you. So there's some place in his mind, he's thanking you and joining with your own mind that thanks itself.
Okay, we're really behind,
Okay,
and we have
okay.
a lot. Can we do a bit of a speed round, Robert?
Yeah,
With
I
some of
guess
these
we
remaining
probably
questions?
need to. Usually
Yeah,
we're gone by now.
I know.
But people are still
but-
here.
Yeah, but there's a lot of questions that remain, so we'll just go through them really quickly,
Okay.
as quick as possible. Jenny says, does the course want us to make a full on forgiveness without any looking at what we think anyone did, but just a big one fell swoop of letting it all go?
Without any looking. That's a good question. I think that the looking is kind of like the priestess vision that Helen had, where she prayed for people without hearing any details of what their requests were. I think the essential gesture of forgiveness does not depend on the looking at the details. It really should be unconditional across the board, regardless of the details. Even if there are times when looking at the details can be part of a practical process of deciding where we're going in that relationship, with that relationship, that can be practical, but that's apart from forgiveness. Forgiveness should be unconditional which means it doesn't really reference the conditions.
Mm-hmm. Anita is asking, well, what about the old adage, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me? How
Well,
does that apply to this?
I think that we're so often fooled. You know, you think of being fooled repeatedly, and you think of con men. Con men don't prey on the Christ in you. They prey on your ego. They know what your ego wants, and they dangle that in front of you. If you're trying to set your ego aside and respond to this person from a place that's not ego-based, you're going to be less susceptible to being conned.
Okay. The rest in the chat was mostly just comments. There was a question about our next workshop that we're hosting, and
Oh, yeah.
it is Sunday, July 19th, and it is on special function, and we'll have the details for that up pretty
Special
soon.
function,
So,
one of those great, super important topics in the course that course students don't talk much about and don't understand much about. And yet it's relevant for every single one of our lives. Very relevant.
yeah. So we have heard you all that you don't want full day on Zoom conferences. So we've shrunk this one down to, I think it's like 2.5 hours, something
I
like
think it's
that.
going to be
So
3 hours. Yeah.
3 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. More on that soon. But in the meantime, we have really gone over. Thanks to all of
Yeah,
you
we
for
have.
sticking with us. And we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you so much. That was
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
excellent.
Blessings.
Very, very good.